Hello everyone, I'm the serial plagiarist, here to scam your mothers once again with a forgery. But on the real, I wanted to have my own shot at explaining prequel hate and the resurgence in popularity in the prequels. I just saw a video by this guy, and after watching it, I knew this bum had no idea about the nuances of Prequel Resurgence. He came across as very ignorant and shallow, failing to understand the proper reasons why the prequels are now receiving more recognition that is well earned. In this video, I'm going to debunk this guy and shed light on why Prequel Resurgence actually happened, rather than the delusional narrative people still try to sell.
The Star Wars prequels aren't good movies.
You're not just wrong, you're stupid. Now wait just a minute. And you're ugly, just like your mum.
They suffer from bad writing,
Bad writing my ass.
awkward acting,
Awkward acting my ass.
overuse of CG,
Ignorance. The prequels had a fuckload of practical effects, and the CGI was groundbreaking. I also don't understand how CGI can be overused.
plot holes,
Plot holes my ass.
and character buttering of beloved characters.
Your intellect is as weak as your dollar. Failure is your destiny. You disrespect yourself and your nation. You are made of stupid.
But why do people enjoy them?
Because all the points you listed was wrong.
Gireum.
Hello fellow Jerry Cans. I originally started writing the script of the video as more of a review of the Star Wars prequel trilogy, even though since I was born in 1997, I grew up with these movies. As an adult, I liked them ironically, while acknowledging they're pretty bad movies. So my original intent was going to bash these movies into oblivion, but then I thought of something.
I get so annoyed by modern prequel haters because they talk down to the audience and be like, you have to acknowledge that they're bad movies that you can also like, blah 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 blah. Just shut the fuck up. It's statements like this that tell me you don't think very highly of prequel fans, given your attitude towards them.
There are so many other YouTube videos out there from content creators I highly respect that have reviewed these movies far better than I ever could.
Jesus Christ, you ruined this video in less than a minute. Rule number 1 of criticism: never bring up or show red letter media as a good review for the Star Wars prequels if you want people to take you seriously. Everything red letter media has ever said has been debunked and disputed a million times over. Hence why Prequel Resurgence exists. For all the sweeping and ignorant statements Plinkett made, they have all been put down. Hard.
And most of my points I would mention probably are covered by them all, so I felt that it was going to be redundant. I highly suggest you check out these 3 reviews of the Star Wars prequel trilogy on YouTube. I think they reviewed these movies the best on this godforsaken website that is infested with hack complaint tubers and clickbaity liars, and are far more competent YouTubers than me. Instead, today, I wanted to focus on something else entirely, and that is, so many people hated these movies when they came out.
And so many people love these movies too.
But why do so many people love it now?
Who's willing to bet that this video will be a disingenuous, poorly researched look into the Star Wars prequels that will completely fail to understand anything?
But first, before I do that, I'll list the problems I personally have with these movies, so you can kind of grasp where I'm coming from, and it'll be useful for later. Maybe you can see if I'm biased or not. It's Gireum's problem with the prequels in
2
minutes,
7
seconds. Ready? Okay, we can move on. Like I said, instead of focusing on why these movies are bad, I want to focus on why so many people love it now, because these movies had a more turbulent history of love and hate than insert history joke here. These movies were panned at first when they came out.
Yeah, they were panned by a toxic vocal minority that failed to understand the movies and made a lot of false, ignorant, or stupid statements about the movies.
And it just weren't the critics or the fans. The average viewers thought it was kinda crap.
Fun fact, It's been proven that the random people Plinkett got in his reviews are actually his real-life friends. These observations have been made in Red Letter Media's other videos, in which these people appeared in other videos. So Plinkett literally got his friends, instead of random people, to describe the prequel characters. So he's a fucking cheapskate. It's the fact that this guy still thinks this video is unbiased, clearly hasn't done his research.
The internet also hated it because of the influence of first-generation YouTubers like Mr. Plinkett.
If only I could go back and debunk Plinkett's ignorant video in 2009, then this never would have happened.
People bully Kelly Mary Chan on the internet. Same things happened 15 years ago with the prequels, you know?
Given Plinkett was one of those malicious fans, he never deserved to be a YouTuber in the first place. Also, Kelly Marie Tran blamed the media, not the fans. I'm sure there were some malicious little shits that did exist, but they share no affiliation with me, and if I ever found out that they did, I would sever all ties with them immediately. The same cannot be said for Plinkett.
War never changes.
Also, hating on George Lucas was like the cool thing to do in the 2000s.
Gee, that clip of George destroying something is so cheesy.
Sort of like the situation J.K. Rowling is in today. Many of you Gen Alpha people probably don't know this, but George Lucas was the OG living meme movie director, sort of like how Zack Snyder is today.
But never for the right reasons.
It's kinda understandable because, I mean, the man butchered the original movies with stupid special edition changes.
Oh, you mean enhancing the poorly aged visuals and touching them up? Yes, some of the special edition changes were ill-advised, but bad changes are few in number. People just wanted it to be the exact same as the original. Like, seriously, grow up!
Made shitty movies like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Red Tails.
Who's willing to bet that this chap has never seen the likes of THX 1138? It's his very first film and a solid foundation in his directing career. Nah, just list 2 examples that weren't received that well. Like, I've never seen Red Tails, and I don't care to, but with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the hate for that movie was way overblown. Perhaps it's fair to call it a disappointment after 20 years, but then to pin everything on George Lucas for the stuff fans didn't like is ludicrous. When is Spielberg ever gonna share the blame? He was the damn director. He had to have approved of the ideas George had. Maybe discussing Kingdom of the Crystal Skull will be another video, but do you see my point?
So the image of George Lucas wasn't real good.
Uh-oh, it's a South Park parody.
If you want to take a look back at this time when George was butt of all jokes, I suggest you check out this documentary called The People vs. George Lucas, released in 2010.
No thanks. I only have to listen to what Mark Hamill said about The People vs. George Lucas to stay far away from that crap. I'm actually working on a film called The Plagiarizer that will be my Disney Star Wars response to The People vs. George Lucas.
Because it really captures the state Star Wars was in back then. But then, Lucas made a surprise decision to sell Star Wars to the Walt Disney Company. A decision that resulted in short, the sequels came out, and they weren't exactly met with warm welcomes. The fan base was divided, and many began to hate the Star Wars sequels. First came the people that said, the Star Wars sequels suck, the prequels are better.
Well, those people weren't wrong, but it shouldn't have been worded that way.
After that, slowly but surely, those people changed to, the Star Wars prequel are not just better, but are misunderstood masterpieces.
Personally, I use the term masterpieces that were shat on by ignorant schmucks that didn't do any fucking research.
You're wrong. How could you even say that?
I first noticed this change of attitude happening in the Star Wars fandom through Reddit. You know the famous subreddit r Prequel memes, right? I remember that subreddit originally started as a sub that mocked the awkward dialogue with the Star Wars prequels and enjoyed the movies ironically like me, but slowly but surely, people started to change. The reposted memes saying, sequels suck, began to get upvotes, and because Star Wars is like politics in that if something sucks, the opposite gets support,
if you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Reposted memes unironically saying, prequel good, sequel bad, began to sprout everywhere, putting the I love democracy image on a poll that had the prequels winning in something is the textbook of lazy memes, guys.
What the fuck is lazy memes even supposed to mean?
Then PewDiePie made the video reviewing the damn subreddit and prequel memes, and now the subreddit is about as big as the main Star Wars Reddit page. Anyways, my point is, I think the cold reception of the sequels is one factor that made the prequels get more love.
Yeah, because the sequels were the true examples of bad Star Wars movies.
So one conclusion we can draw is that one of the big factors why the prequels get so much love is because of relative comparison to the sequels.
It's more than that though. Ever heard of John Carpenter's The Thing? This stuff needs to be judged case by case, and it's genuine with the prequels.
However, I don't think that was enough. Like, for example, if Batman movies in the next 10 years suck, in 10 years, I'm not gonna say Zack Snyder's god-awful DC movies were better, because those movies have, does, and will always suck, no matter what. The concept was bad, the ideas were bad, the characters were bad, the movies are just fundamentally broken, and I say the prequels aren't.
Assuming that Prequel Resurgence comes down to people just spiting a worse movie is so pathetically lazy. Did you ever see The Thing, for example? That movie had a research long before the prequel film came out, so it's clear that every case is unique. Now, I'm sure there are people who just want to spite the sequels, but for me and everyone else who actually watched the movies, I always loved them, and I never knew about the online hatred until I started really using the internet.
So, what's the difference? Is there something to the prequels other than relative comparison that makes them beloved?
Yes!
Whenever someone says, I think the Star Wars prequels are masterpieces, or I unironically love the Star Wars prequels, I think 99% of the time, they're lying.
But why would they be lying exactly? Don't tell me that this is gonna be because of external source material.
And lying to themselves. Liar! You guys don't love the prequel movies. No, in actuality, you guys love the Star Wars prequel universe.
Universe isn't even the right term. Era is. This may seem minor, but it goes to show how stupid this guy's points are.
If you ask me, the biggest problem with the Star Wars prequel is not the bad dialogue, the acting, nor the story like everyone says. The biggest problem of the prequels could be its greatest strength, and it's that George had too many ideas for the movie and not enough time. George had too many ideas and he got carried away with it. As he got old and took complete creative control over the directing, writing, and producing.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear before we continue that just because he had more creative control with the prequels does not mean he didn't have people refine his work. The yes man argument is bullshit and pathetically lazy.
He failed to make pathways for the audience to care, make the characters likable, and give emotion to the movies. It feels like George was interested in doing everything perfectly except making a good story.
Well, that's flat out wrong because the prequels have an incredible story.
Which I think is a big shame. What do I mean by saying George Lucas had too many ideas and not enough time? For example, let's talk about the underlings of Palpatine. I know Darth Maul, Dooku, and Grievous are supposed to be three villains with aspects that foreshadows Darth Vader, which is a wonderful idea on paper. But because George wanted to cram all three villains into 3 movies, there's not enough time to flesh out these characters.
I'm pretty sure Maul and Grievous specifically were characters that weren't designed to have arcs, and Dooku is fucking fine as he is.
They either die a really stupid death.
Maul's arrogance being bested is not a stupid death. It's a triumph for Obi-Wan.
Do nothing in the story and be bland, or be a plot device to distract Obi-Wan.
Oh gee, because Grievous had nothing to him as a character. Dude, his personality is an arrogant, cowardly, ruthless cyborg. He has a presence in the movie beyond a plot device. When I pointed this out, I had some prequel hater then deflect the point onto his personality being cliche and akin to a Scooby-Doo villain. That's the mentality of prequel haters. Get debunked on one thing, they either persist or deflect it onto something else.
George had so many villain ideas he had to cut a villain for a movie, and that became Asajj Ventress, a character that only appears in spin-off material. If you ask me, they should have kept Darth Maul alive so he and Obi-Wan can have a rivalry like he does in the Clone Wars. So Obi-Wan Kenobi will have a character moment if he's going after Darth Maul for revenge of his master's death or for justice.
But bullshitting Maul back from the dead would be contrived as shit. It was in the Clone Wars, and it would be here. Obi-Wan didn't need an arc with Maul. It's just fans who nitpick these movies out of something they wanted that didn't need to be in the movie.
And I think Dooku and Grievous could have been combined into one character, because their role in the story is the exact same, a temporary pawn of Sidious until he gets his real prize, Anakin.
Yeah, you're wrong. Not only are Dooku and Grievous completely different as characters, but they both have different roles. Grievous is the general of the droid army, and Dooku is the head of the separatist movement. Just because the leader died doesn't mean the war will automatically end. The chain of command needs to be wiped out in general. And there's also the Separatist Council too, comprised of over a dozen members that are vital to the war effort.
I think the biggest example of George having too many ideas and not enough time in the movies are the clone troopers. I love the clone troopers, trusting men that fight with the Jedi, that question their individuality and if they're no different from the droids, who ultimately turn on the Jedi due to no choice. What a great idea. But in the movies, because we didn't have enough time to get to know the clones, they're just boring talking CG characters who are no different from the droids they fight.
The clones were literally characterized by Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones. I said before that a character doesn't need to speak for us to care about them. A connection is actually something that can work a lot of the time, depending on the story and the context. The clones work just fine in the films, and at most, characterization would have just been icing on the cake.
And we don't even know why they turn on the Jedi when Palpatine tells them to do so.
Yes we do. Did you forget the line where they say that the clones were literally made to follow orders without question? Palpatine outranks the Jedi. Of course they turn on the Jedi generals. Did you even watch the prequels? I have no idea why people question this, as if the movie said the clones had independence, which they don't. They were literally bred for war, and questioning or refusing orders due to their upbringing would make the whole structure fall apart.
Just based on the movies, you never know they're programmed to follow Palpatine's orders over anything else, which was explained in the books, or have brain chips in their head, which was explained in the episode of the Clone Wars that came out 9 years after Revenge of the Sith.
Once again, everything you just said was wrong.
The structure of the prequels doesn't make much sense either if you think about it. The first movie is about a minor skirmish in the Republic, which isn't really a Star War.
That is the stupidest criticism ever. Halo Reach doesn't have a Halo ring in it, but it's still a Halo game. Halo is just the name of the series for fuck's sake. Same with Star Wars, it still has action and battles in it.
And it's the second movie where the actual war starts, and the third episode when the Clone War ends. If this was any other filmmaker, the Clone War should have started with Episode 1, Episode 2 should have been a story set in mid-war during the Clone Wars, and Episode 3 should have been the end. But because George wanted to explore what the universe was like before the Clone Wars, we barely see the actual Clone Wars in the movie and saw it fully happen on TV shows, which was where we actually got to see Anakin mature and change.
Okay, first, the story absolutely needed to plant the roots for the Clone Wars. And second, we see plenty of the Clone Wars. Episode 2 establishes why it's happening, and Episode 3 shows us so many battles. Some briefly, but they're still there for fuck's sake.
What I think George should have done was to hire a writer and give the ideas to him.
George can write fine on his own, thanks.
For example, using the Senate to explain how Palpatine got power gives backstory to the character and is a wonderful idea, but the Senate scenes are way too long and should have been condensed or rewritten so they're less boring and don't make me want to doze off.
Dude, the Senate meeting in The Phantom Menace only goes on for 2 minutes. 2 minutes! How is that long and boring? You're suggesting condensing an already super short scene? I think I understand now why the Senate meeting was as long as it was.
People complain about Rise of Skywalker requiring supplementary material like visual dictionaries to fully understand, when the prequels have been doing that for years before.
No, they fucking haven't. They only give further nuance to the story. The details we did need were in the movies, so false equivalence.
You all just got used to the prequel universe, that's all. And that's another reason why people look fondly back at the prequels, because they love the ideas.
Also, I consumed zero of the external material until much later, and I still love the prequels. So yeah, how do you explain me exactly?
George Lucas always says he likes new ideas. He just likes trying out new stuff, no matter if that stuff is good or bad.
They wanted to do a retro movie. I don't like that. Every movie I worked very hard to make them different. I make them completely different with, different planets, with different spaceships.
He's the guy that said his favorite Clone Wars episode is the one where droids get stuck in the desert, which could be the worst Clone Wars episode that was ever made.
So personal preference on the show he funded makes him a bad filmmaker as a whole? This chump's really grasping at straws, ain't he?
But it was damn unique.
The one with the droids.
Oh, when they're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Oh my god, really?
So since I'm not the man, I can't speak for him, but I bet you, if you were to ask him to choose which sequel movie he likes the best, he'll probably pick The Last Jedi.
What we do know about George's thoughts, he was horrified. Completely different reaction to that of The Force Awakens, where it was more drab and downbeat, but not completely.
Even if you hate everything about TLJ, you have to admit it's the most unique one out of the bunch with new ideas, compared to the remakes of A New Hope and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, that's another video I have to make in the future aside from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Why The Last Jedi is a ripoff, just like The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, because it absolutely is a ripoff. It was actually one of the first of the two gripes I had with the movie, walking out of the theater, the other being Luke Skywalker's depiction.
And I bet his favorite sequel planet is Canto Bight, because he likes it when Star Wars incorporate real-life places into the world like it did with the opera at Coruscant. And Canto Bight is a casino.
Yeah, I really don't know about that, bud.
Another reason why people love the prequels is the world building through the detail in the movies, and the expanded lore through the details. Every character in the extras or at the background has a story planned in the prequels. That is why Wikipedia is such an amusing place to read about. All the Jedi you see in the background in the prequels during boring council discussion scenes.
Wow, you really are that shallow. Boring council meetings, fuck off.
All have backstories to them. All of them have unique alien designs that make them memorable, which makes the universe interesting and fun. Contrast that to the sequels. On the hero's side, it's just gruff-looking resistance people that are bland, less interesting than Mario Kart 8 soundtracks. Like, I don't want to know the backstory of these bland human individuals that are just inferior copies of the army they're imitating, which is the original trilogy's rebellion army. God bless you, General Dodonna. I understand that the political scenes in the prequels are dumb and boring.
Dumb and boring my ass. You were probably so invested you pissed yourself.
And George Lucas is a clown for saying these movies about politics are for 12-year-olds.
But, you know, it's a film for 12-year-olds.
The Star Wars prequels are not exclusively about politics, for fuck's sake. And you misunderstood George's line about the 12-year-old shit. A 12-year-old focused film does not equal dumb film. I'm sick of having to say this.
But I think the reason why these political scenes existed was because George wanted to explain how the prequel world and the Clone Wars operate on a technical level, because he had so many ideas and wanted to explain. It was just executed poorly. But because these scenes exist, we really understand exactly how the Clone Wars work.
I'm waiting for the part where the film is bad for doing this.
Who paid for the clones? Rich motherfucker Count Dooku. Who built the droids? The Techno-Union. Who supplies the money for the Confederates? The Muns and the banking clans. Why were they built? So Palpatine get more power. Contrast that to the sequels. Even after 3 movies, I still don't understand how the sequel world, which consists of the New Republic, First Order, or Final Order, work. How did the First Order get the money to build the Starkiller base?
Insanity.
I don't know. How did they recruit so many troops? They kidnapped babies?
I was taken from a family I'll never know.
We were conscripted as kids. All of us.
Wait, how can you build an army with just young kidnapped soldiers? Wouldn't Child Protective Services be alerted? What is the difference between the New Republic and the Resistance, and why is Leia operating it? Why didn't the New Republic have an army? How did Palpatine get 1,000 Star Destroyers that could all destroy planets? You see what I mean? There was like zero thought process to the world building in the sequels, and I think the world building aspect of the prequels is what people love. I think that the screenwriters and the directors of the sequels are more focused on telling a story. Yeah, right. And they didn't care about the world building, which makes the universe of the sequel really boring. All the planets too. I love how every planet that appears is different. Not only are the biomes different, but each planet has different architecture, different technology, different culture. Like Naboo, Coruscant, Kamino, Geonosis, Utapau, Mustafar all look different and feel very unique and memorable. That is why even planets that appear for 5 seconds in the movie like Felucia are memorable, and those planets can be expanded greatly in the Clone Wars animated TV show.
So what the fuck's the problem?
Again, contrast with the sequels. I literally counted 3 bland forest planets, 2 desert planets that you probably are not even curious of what their names are. All of them just feel like nostalgia of classic original trilogy riff-off planets, and the reason why OT planets are kind of boring is because of technical limitations, so they chose desert, jungle, frozen wasteland, sky, and Northern California. This is the 2000s, you have CG, you don't necessarily need to copy this for God's sake.
Why the fuck did you complain about CG earlier in the movie then?
And that is why out of all the sequel planets and locations, Exegol is actually my favorite.
The Korriban ripoff? For someone who claims to know of the external source material, this one detail slipped your mind.
And it's not only because it's pretty unique and moody. Palpatine's hideout actually has a lot of unique looking architecture with probably a lot of Sith history backstory behind them, and many unexplained seeds for stories to grow, like where the Sith troopers and the weird cultists wearing hoods come from. You might hate Exegol because it's the planet that dug up Palpatine from the grave, but I actually really like it because ironically, it's the most unique and memorable sequel planet that I would like to see more in the future. Because of the excellent world building from the prequels, there are so many goddamn spin-off materials from the movies. What I find respectable about George Lucas is that even though his movies were shat on by the audience and the critics,
a vocal minority you mean,
he never gave up on them. When the movies were coming out between 1999 and 2005, there were so many fucking books, comics, merchandise that came out that expanded the prequel universe. I mentioned in the Pokemon vs Star Wars video where I compared George Lucas to Junichi Masuda, I said George Lucas is a man that functions better when he's only an idea man and not the actual filmmaker.
Please not saved in the edit bullshit, because his ex-wife has debunked that shit.
He did excellently with the original trilogy, and he did it best with the Clone Wars. Maybe I'll explain why Clone Wars is the best Star Wars content ever created more detailed in a future video.
Well, you'd be dead wrong because we have Revenge of the Sith.
But the Clone Wars is the best thing that came out of the prequels.
Nope, Revenge of the Sith.
It feels like George Lucas built a canvas for other writers and creators to draw upon, and Clone Wars is a masterwork of an art that was drawn on the canvas. So the Star Wars prequels aren't good movies, but they're good templates.
You're not just wrong, you're stupid. Now wait just a minute. And you're ugly, just like your mum.
The Clone Wars has so much story material. We get to see so many aspects of the Clone War. We see the war affecting the higher-ups, criminals and outlaws, the Jedi, the soldiers and the opposing forces who are just caught in the battle. And it's wonderful watching the stories of the characters unfold in this universe.
What's the point of all this? I mean, why? I don't know, sir. I don't think anybody knows. But I do know that someday this war is gonna end. Then what? We're soldiers. What happens to us then?
That is why I believe people love the Clone Wars and prequel universe so much. And that is why I love the prequel universe as well.
Yep, you definitely don't understand Prequel Resurgence. To assume that every single prequel fan has seen all the external material is ridiculous. At best, they just saw the Clone Wars show because they already love the films. If external material was the case, we'd be talking about those.
I feel like George Lucas is like J.R.R. Tolkien with his imaginative world, but the difference is George can't write shit for the life of me.
Cut it with the George insults and give credit when it's due, for fuck's sake.
I should have known the Jedi were plotting to take over.
Oh, for fuck's sake. There's so many things wrong with this text. People just call Anakin dumb to shit on the movies when they fail to understand what's going on and why it's going on. Of course Anakin knew Palpatine orchestrated both sides of the war. But it's not just that. It's not like Anakin actually cares about Palps, especially at this point. He literally says to Padme on Mustafar that he can overthrow the Chancellor. Plus, Palps is seemingly the only one who can save Padme from death. And when Anakin was too late to save his mother in the previous movie, he swore that he would learn to stop people from dying. It's clear here that he's not stupid, but good luck finding nuances like this from other buffoons like this.
Compare that to the sequels. The Resistance vs First Order is so boring. First, it's just an excuse to bring back old teen nostalgia, like Star Destroyers, TIE Fighters, Stormtroopers, and X-Wings because that's what they thought the fans wanted.
I clapped when I saw it!
Ugh. Red Letter Media again?
Second, you need to explain why this war is happening, even if political dialogue is boring. They went the complete opposite way of explaining too much in the prequels to not explaining in the sequels, and we don't even care why the heroes are fighting the villains in the movies. I can't believe the only line that explains the Emperor coming back we ever got was literally,
somehow Palpatine returned.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
Also, Disney gave up after the sequels. The only animated series we got that is set in the sequel universe is Star Wars Resistance, which no one watched because it was geared for children.
No, it was because it was garbage. Get it right.
And after Rise of Skywalker, I can't believe the only thing we got is the LEGO Star Wars Holiday Special, which by the way, is the only material that confirms Finn is a Force sensitive. Like, what the fuck, man? And there are like 0 planned materials left for the sequel universe to grow. I know you guys hate the sequels, but I love to see a Clone Wars animated style TV show set between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. It will give us time to like Rey, like how we got to like Anakin through the Clone Wars, and explain plot holes in episode 9 of how they got the Resistance fleet back, and how Palpatine came back from the dead.
Yeah, that show would flop because the sequels failed to do the basics. Literally every external sequel story is a bomb. False equivalence again.
Don't give up 5 years and 3 movies for God's sake, Disney. You already played your cards, so you must use them. What's kind of a shame is because I'm a nerd without a life, I actually somewhat do know the backstory of the Star Wars sequels, and it's not bad. So the reason why Leia is running a resistance army separate from the New Republic is because a video recording of Bail Organa explaining that she is Darth Vader's daughter got leaked online on the Star Wars internet or something. So she got kicked out of the New Republic Senate, so she was left with her old friends and few soldiers, which is the resistance army. Also, the First Order was able to get the money and resources to build an army and a Starkiller base because the New Republic was split into 2 parties, like the Republic was right before the Clone Wars, and the side that was the Confederate Army donated money and resources to the First Order, so that's how they got the army and war broke out. These are not bad ideas that actually makes the sequel universe make sense. It came from one book called Star Wars Bloodlines. And apparently, according to Wikipedia, these ideas about the New Republic splitting up were actually thought up by Rian Johnson.
Oh boy.
Well, it would have been nice to explain that on screen in The Last Jedi, Ryan. Don't explain in a book only die-hard nerds will read. Also, the Leia being outed as Vader's daughter story was apparently planned to be an animated movie, so I hope that project becomes real. But no, Disney gave up on the sequels after episode 9, and now we're back to OT and PT nostalgia because we can't take risks.
Thanks for reminding me that The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch exist. Those 2 are so overrated.
Even though George Lucas is a bad filmmaker,
wrong again.
I love that he took risks and never gave up on the prequels, no matter what the critics and the fans told him. And look where we are now. What I find frustrating about the prequels is the missed potential, because I think these movies could have been really good if there were some few minor changes, because conceptually, these movies are excellent and so good. Even though I like the sequels, I think the sequels are conceptually bad movies because they're forcibly continuing on the happily ever after ending of Return of the Jedi. Ryan and JEDI were fighting an uphill battle because it was difficult to give post episode 6 Luke Skywalker a proper character arc.
He could have been anything but a dirty, scary, homeless man.
And it was kind of inevitable Han Solo and Luke would die tragic deaths. Anyways, what concepts in the prequels do I mean? Well, on paper, the general structure of those prequels are excellent. Young boy born in slavery because a great Jedi Knight falls in love and tragically turns evil because of love and accidentally kills his lover. It's an excellent concept for a story, but the execution was just horrible.
Incorrect.
Because Lucas had a million other ideas, we didn't have enough time to know Anakin as a character and his personality, his relationship with Obi-Wan and Palpatine, so his eventual fall in the story feels rushed and nonsensical.
No, it's just that you failed to pay attention.
What's worse is because George Lucas's incompetency of writing human dialogue, most of the character interactions that should be wonderful feel cringy and hard to watch.
You know, George said in the commentary that the romance scenes were awkward. That's literally the whole point. Just because it's awkward doesn't mean it's bad. It's exactly how it's supposed to be, for God's sake. Like, what I mean is that if a scene is meant to show a character struggling to flirt and it comes across as cringe, then how is that a flaw?
Like, aren't romance scenes always fan favorite scenes in fandom since people like to ship? It's the opposite in the Star Wars prequels because Padme and Anakin's lines are even parts that prequel stan skips through.
Yeah, you need to watch more prequel stans, because I certainly don't.
Let's try to think of an example of a scene that was conceptually good, but failed due to execution, and could have been good if it was just tweaked a little with a rewrite. Say, the scene where Anakin goes on a bloodthirsty rant about how he killed an entire village of sand people for killing his mother, and how he hates them. I actually think the dialogue about how Anakin is angry and feels no remorse isn't bad, because it shows Anakin is a psychopathic monster deep inside, and he really likes revenge.
No, fuck the sand people. I'm with Anakin. No evil done here.
The problem is the context. He's spouting this to his love of his life.
And that's bad because...
I know Anakin's sad about his mom dying, but what sane man would do that?
What the hell's wrong with him saying this to Padme? Who else is he gonna express it to? Padme literally came down to speak to Anakin and make him feel better. Plus, given how Padme is probably the one Anakin is closest to, he feels safe expressing his hatred to the same people to her. You really want to grasp at straws, don't ya?
What's worse, this could have been fixed easily. Just change the scene so that Anakin is shouting this on a hologram phone call to Palpatine instead of Padme.
What?
Then when Anakin shades, "I hate them," Palpatine will be like, "It is only natural. They took their mother, you wanted revenge." It will be great character moments for both of them, and will make Palpatine grooming Anakin more natural.
I am so done with this video right now. I don't see how this could have made this scene any better. It's fine as it is.
What's weird is that maybe even John Williams thought this was a better alternative and was trying to give subtle hints to George to change the story, cause you can hear the Emperor's theme during this scene.
Or it's supposed to give a sinister tone to this revelation.
And in the next movie, Palpatine literally says how Anakin told him about the Sand People.
Remember what you told me about your mother and the Sand People?
Would have been nice to see that on screen, George.
You expect something based on personal preference again. We didn't need to see that, for fuck's sake.
George Lucas really should have been the idea man like he was for ESP and RTJ and gave the writing and directing duty to the other people for the prequels.
More of this Idea George bullshit. Grow up!
The dream match between Idea Man and competent director was only seen twice in Star Wars in my opinion, and that was Episode 5 and 6 and the Clone Wars, and they're one of the best Star Wars contents created. Anyways, my conclusion is, most people forgot about the awfulness of the prequels.
Awfulness that never existed to begin with, just deluded ignorance.
Because of nostalgia, flavor, rose-tinted glasses since they grew up with it.
Wrong.
They just remembered the concepts and George Lucas's wonderful ideas.
Wrong.
The shows and merchandise that spinned out of the prequels, forget all the horrible BS that comes with it in the prequels. And after the sequels, which are the worst thing that exists since Elon Musk, now the prequels are magically misunderstood masterpieces.
Wrong.
And I still disagree.
Heresy.
Yes, the Clone Wars fixed the problems and filled in the plot holes.
Wrong.
And yes, the ideas and worlds presented in the movies are wonderful, but still not enough for me. I love the Star Wars prequel universe, but I still refuse to call them good movies.
Heresy!
To me, it's fixing the problem after it's too late. You know what the prequels are? They're the No Man's Sky of movies, fixing the problem after it comes out.
Wrong.
Then I guess the Star Wars sequels are the Fallout 76 in its current state.
All of this just works.
Anyways, the difference is games gets updates, but the movies don't get updates. Cause if you try to update movies, it will be a disaster like the special edition changes of the OT.
Okay, I'm fucking done with this video. Hopefully I've made it clear that this chump doesn't understand a thing about Prequel Resurgence and why it happened. So that's my commentary on this flat out incorrect, disingenuous loser. I'm JJ Plagiarisms, and until next time, what are stories about mystery boxes?
We found you hiding, we found you lying, choking on the dirt and sand. Your former glories and all your stories, dragged and washed with